to my podcast. I'm RajaRao Pagidipalli. This will be a journey into the heart of what truly makes us human. We often celebrate intelligence, we often celebrate achievements, we often celebrate progress, but beneath it's all lies a force even more powerful. That is the world of emotions. That is what we are discussing today. The world of emotions. Emotions shape our decisions, guide our relationships, and determine the quality of our lives. Yet, they are also the most misunderstood and neglected part of our growth. So, in this podcast, together we will explore the fascinating story of emotional intelligence. Why it matters more than IQ, how it shapes love and leadership, how it touches health and healing, and how it can be taught to children as the language of the heart. Along the way, we will uncover stories, examples, and lessons that remind us that success is not just about being smart. It is about being wise with our emotions. So take a deep breath, open your heart as well as your mind, and let's begin this journey. Imagine emotions as ancient messengers. They are whispering survival codes into our blood long before civilization was born. They are not mere fleeting moods, but deeply etched instructions carved into our nervous system by thousands of generations who learned that love, fear, anger, joy, and sadness each had their own role in keeping us alive. A parent diving into rushing water to save a child, even at the cost of their own life. It reflects how emotions can eclipse logic, making the irrational the only possible choice. That is the paradox of feelings. That is the paradox of emotions. Seen from the mind, they may appear reckless, but seen from the heart, they embody the very essence of humanity. Consider the tragic story of a father jolted awake by a sound in his home, believing an intruder had entered. He instinctively grabbed his pistol, his body already flooded with the fierce ancient chemistry, blood rushing to his muscles, adrenaline pumping through his veins. But the intruder was his daughter, playing a prank. In one impulsive second, his fear sharpened over millennia for survival, led to irreversible loss. It was not cruelty but biology, an old brain reacting to a new world. That is what emotions do. They prepare us to act. Anger sends blood to our face. Fear stiffens our legs to run. Love quiets the body, inviting closeness. Sadness slows us, drawing us inward to heal. Every feeling is a script. Every emotion is a script rehearsed since the dawn of our species. Yet, while these scripts saved us in the Pleistocene, they do not always fit our modern stage. A sudden rage in a traffic jam or panic in a boardroom. It can be just as dangerous as a misplaced fear in the wilderness. At the center of this drama is the amygdala, an almond-shaped sentinel buried deep in the brain. It is swift, decisive, and sometimes sloppy, like a smoke alarm that goes off whether it senses fire or just burnt toast. In moments of emotional hijacking, the amygdala, it sieges a command before reason can weigh in. That is why people say, I don't know what came over me. Whether it is a young woman throwing away a treasured gift in a burst of hurt, or a man leaping into a canal to rescue a drowning child before realizing what he was doing. The amygdala, it moves first and thought scrambles after. These emotional hijackings they are double-edged. They can drive unspeakable violence as in crimes of passion, or summon breathtaking courage as in acts of rescue. They etch memories with intensity. Who doesn't remember their first heartbreak or where they were when tragedy struck the nation? The Ahmed Gala, it stamps these moments into permanence, ensuring we never forget the lessons of fear, joy, or loss. Yet, it can also misfire, reviving terrors from childhood or war in the middle of ordinary life, dragging us backward into ghosts of old horror. And so, within us, two minds are in constant dialogue: the rational and the emotional. Usually, they collaborate beautifully. Feeling guides thought, thought refines feeling. But when the emotional mind floods the rational, balance tips into chaos. Imagine the brain as a courtroom. Brain as a courtroom. The rational mind is the calm judge weighing evidence, but the emotional mind is the passionate lawyer pounding the table, demanding immediate action. In most cases, the judge and the lawyer, they reach a wise verdict together. But sometimes the lawyer storms out with the gavel and the trial collapses into disorder. This is the architecture of our inner life. The emotional brain is not a relic to be despised, but a compass to be understood. It carries both the wisdom of survival and the risk of misdirection. To master it, it is not to silence it, but to harmonize it, to let passion and reason dance rather than duel. Only then we can turn the raw impulses of our evolutionary past into the refined intelligence our present demands. So, we often admire the brilliance of the mind. The child who solves mathematics problems faster than a calculator. The students who tops every exam. The colleagues whose IQ scores, they are off the charts. But research and even our daily observations, they tell us that the same story. There are people who shine in the classrooms yet stumble in boardrooms, who ace entrance tests but fail at friendships, who dazzle in theory yet falter in love. Their minds are sharp, but their hearts remain untrained. Picture a man who lands his dream job because of his stellar technical skills. On paper, he is the perfect candidate. Yet, within months, he alienates his team, clashes with the superiors, and finds himself isolated. His downfall is not a lack of knowledge, but a lack of emotional navigation. The ability to listen, to manage stress, to inspire rather than intimidate. This is where intelligence without emotional grounding becomes a brittle sword, sharp, yes, but easily broken. Researchers studying why some people with modest IQs they thrive while brilliant minds flounder, uncovered something profound. Success in life, whether in love, leadership, or longevity, it depends less on the sheer horsepower of intellect and more on how well one understands and manages emotions. Emotional intelligence, as they framed it, emotional intelligence is the silent architecture of a life well lived. It is composed of 5 pillars: knowing yourself, mastering emotions, staying motivated, recognizing the feeling of others, and weaving all these into the fabric of human relationships. Think of self-awareness as holding up a mirror, not to your face, but to your inner world. It is the quiet recognition of what you are feeling and why. Without this mirror, anger blindsides us, anxiety rules us, and joy slips past unappreciated. Self-awareness is the foundation, but not enough on its own. Imagine knowing that you are furious but lacking the discipline to hold back your words. The damage is done and apologies arrive too late. That is why self-management is the next bridge, transforming raw impulses into measured actions. Then comes motivation. Not the shallow kind driven by fear or failure, but the deep flame that keeps us moving when obstacles mount. It is what allows an athlete to train before dawn, or a student from a humble village to persevere against odds until he becomes the first in his family to graduate. Motivation converts emotion into endurance, but a life lived only inwardly, it is incomplete. Empathy stretches us outward. It is the art of reading another's tears even when their lips are smiling. When their lips are smiling, of hearing the fear behind a colleague's silence. When their lips are smiling, of sensing the loneliness masked by laughter. Empathy, it allows us to step into another's skin. And in doing so, we dissolve the walls. We dissolve the walls that separate us. And finally, social skills. The ability to work together, to resolve conflicts, to inspire trust. They are the threads that bind communities, organizations, and even nations. Without them, even the brightest mind, it works in isolation, like a bulb burning brilliantly in an empty room. Perhaps the most haunting evidence, it comes from stories of prodigies who, despite their mental gifts, they lived lives marked by bitterness, addiction, or alienation. Contrast them with countless examples of individuals of average academic ability who, with emotional wisdom, built enduring friendships, led with compassion, and created homes filled with warmth. It is not intelligence that determines happiness. It is the intelligence of the heart. So, when smart becomes dumb, it is not a failure of the brain, but it is a failure of the balance. The head and the heart, they must learn to speak to each other. Logic must pause to listen to the feeling. Reason must respect intuition. The future does not belong to the cleverest mind alone, but to the mind that can harmonize with emotion. And in that harmony lies not only success, but also joy, connection, and the rare gift of a life well lived. Close your eyes for a moment and think of the phrase carved into the ancient stone of Delphi. Know thyself. Know yourself. It sounds simple, almost obvious, but in truth, it is the hardest, most profound lesson of emotional intelligence. To know yourself is not merely to know your name, your profession, or your likes and dislikes. It is to stand face to face with your emotions in real time. To feel the rise of anger before it spills into your words. To notice the heaviness of sadness before it drags you into silence. To sense joy blooming inside you before it slips away unnoticed. Self-awareness is the first step, the foundation, the ground upon which every other emotional skill is built. Without it, we are blind pilots. Without it, flying through storms with no compass. Some people live with this awareness as a constant companion. They can name what they feel, adjust their moods, and choose their responses wisely. They are not perfect, but they are present. Others are engulfed by emotions, tossed around like a small boat on wild waves. For them, anger is not just a feeling, it is a storm that drowns reason. Anxiety is not just a thought, it is a prison that locks them in. And then there are those who live in a strange emptiness, unable to name or express what they feel. Trapped in alexithymia, where words for inner life simply vanish. To live without emotional language is to live without a map of the heart. But here lies the truth. Awareness is freedom. The moment you can say, I am angry, you have already created space between the fire and the action. The moment you whisper to yourself, I am anxious, you have loosened the chains of panic. Awareness does not kill emotion, it tames it, it shapes it, it makes it useful. And yet, even when we know our feelings, we often become their slaves. Think of anger. It rarely explodes in a single spark. More often, it layers itself inside us, like dry leaves piling in the forest, waiting for the smallest flame. A cutting remark, an insult, a delay in traffic, it suddenly, the fire is roaring. Or take anxiety. It feeds on whispers of what if until a chorus of doubt drowns out peace. Sadness too can linger, feeding on memories, keeping us trapped in yesterday's shadows. But remember this, while we cannot always choose the emotions that rise in us, we can choose how long they stay. Anger can be shortened by stepping back, by walking away, by reminding ourselves that rage is often a poor storyteller. Anxiety can be challenged with truth, asking, is this fear real or is it only a shadow? Sadness can be softened with distraction, with movement, with connection until it loosens its grip. Emotions will knock on our door, but we decide how long they sit at our table. One of the greatest lessons about emotional mastery came from a simple experiment with children and marshmallows. A small treat placed before a child and the promise of a second if they could wait. Some children grabbed it at once, unable to resist the temptation of the taste. Others waited. Others waited, squirming in their seats, inventing little games to distract themselves. Decades later, researchers found that those who waited, they went on to lead more successful lives, better health, stronger careers, happier relationships. The test was not about sugar, it was about self-control, the ability to delay gratification, to say no to an impulse for the sake of a greater ace. Optimism to plays a role in the mastery. Think of two people facing the same setback. Say the loss of job. The loss of job. The pessimist says, this always happens to me, I am doomed. While the optimist says, this is temporary, I will find another way. Which one do you think recovers faster, tries again, rebuilds? Optimism is not denial. It is courage wearing a smile. And it is teachable. Imagine a generation of children not only learning math and science, but also how to believe in themselves, how to preserve, how to kindle hope when the world feels dark. From self-mastery, we move to empathy, the bridge between hearts. Even infants cry when they hear another baby cry, as if wired from birth to share in another's pain. As we grow, this capacity becomes refined. This capacity becomes refined. Empathy, a glance, a tremor in someone's voice, the way their eyes evade ours. These subtle cues, they tell us what no words can. In fact, more than 90% of empathy is silent. 90% of empathy is silent. A long ways spoken not with sentences but with sighs, gestures, and expressions. When parents comfort a child, they tune the child's inner instrument, teaching them that emotions can be understood, that emotions can be soothed, that emotions can be respected. But when children grow in neglect, abuse, or indifference, empathy can be stunted, replaced by hypervigilance or emotional coldness. Without empathy, morality itself collapses. It is empathy that keeps us from cruelty, that makes kindness possible, that allows us to live not only as individuals but as a society. And then there are the social arts, the crowning jewel of emotional intelligence, to move gracefully among people, to express feelings without wounding, to read the moods of a group and set a positive tone. This is the mark of true leadership. Have you ever walked into a room where one person's laughter lightens the air, or where one person's anger poisons it? That is emotional contagion, the silent spread of mood. Leaders, teachers, parents, friends, whether know it or not, they carry the power. They carry the power to shift the emotional climate around them. Social brilliance is not about charm alone. It is about attunement, authenticity, and the ability to connect. So, the journey is clear. First, know yourself, then master your impulses, stay motivated when the road is long. Open your heart to the feelings of others, and finally, weave these threads into the fabric of community. This is emotional intelligence, not a luxury. It is a necessity. But it is a necessity. It is the art of living wisely with our own emotions and gracefully with the emotions of others. And in a world often fractured by misunderstanding and haste, it may be the single greatest skill we can cultivate for our success, for our happiness, and for the humanity we all share. So, let us step into the space where emotions truly show their power, not in abstract theories, but in the raw arenas of life. Our closest relationships, our workplaces, and even in the fragile balance of our health. These are the places where emotional intelligence either build bridges or burn them. Consider love first. Once upon a time, marriage was held together by social pressure, traditions, and survival needs. At the time, divorce was rare, barely 10% a century ago. But as society evolved, as women found their voices and their choices widened, the numbers climbed to staggering levels. 2 out of 3 marriages, they are breaking apart by the 1990s. Why? It's happening in Western countries and also coming into our nation. Not simply because people changed partners more easily, but because the emotional glue weakened. Right. Compatibility alone was never enough. The real challenge has always been managing the stormy seas of conflict. Men and women, they often approach these storms differently. Women tend to invite discussion, to seek resolution through words, to bring emotions to the table. On the other hand, men often retreat, misreading this invitation as confrontation, withdrawing into silence. Picture a wife saying, "We need to talk," and a husband hearing it as an alarm bell, not a bridge. So, emotional intelligence, it becomes the saving grace here. The ability to listen without defensiveness, to express without attacking, to transform disagreements from battlefields into classrooms where understanding grows. Relationships are not sustained by the absence of conflict, but by the presence of emotional skills. Now, carry this wisdom into the workplace. We often assume that success at work is about intellect, degrees, or technical know-how. But the real leaders, the ones people follow, not out of fear but out of trust, possess something deeper. They manage with heart. They know how to give criticism without crushing confidence. Specific enough to guide, sensitive enough to preserve dignity, and solution focused enough to inspire improvement. Think of 2 bosses. One slams a report on your desk and says, "This is sloppy." Another sits beside you and says, "This part is strong. Here is where it could shine even more. Let's fix it together." Which one makes us want to try harder? Which one earns loyalty? The difference is emotional intelligence in action. In diverse workplaces where backgrounds, beliefs, and temperaments collide, logic alone cannot hold teams together. Emotional competence is the silent conductor that turns noise into harmony. It is what that allows a group of individuals to function as a team, to pool their talents into a collective intelligence greater than the sum of its parts. When emotions are ignored, conflicts fester, silos form, creativity shrivels. But when emotions are honored and managed, collaboration blossoms, persuasion flows, and shared goals become achievable. And then, perhaps most powerfully, Emotions touch the very core of our health. Doctors and scientists, they have long studied germs, genetics, and lifestyle choices like diet or smoking. But what about anger? What about loneliness? What about the corrosive drip of chronic stress? Studies, they show that toxic emotions, they can be as damaging as packs of cigarettes a day. Anger weakens immunity. Stress slows recovery. Grief can literally break the heart. Picture two patients recovering from surgery. One feels isolated, anxious, unheard. The other feels cared for, reassured, surrounded by support. Their physical conditions may be identical, but their recoveries, they will not be. The one cushioned by positive emotions heals faster, suffers fewer complications, and regains strength more quickly. That is not magic. It is biology. It is biology responding to love, hope, and comfort. Yet, too often, healthcare has focused on curing the disease while ignoring the human being. A rushed diagnosis, a cold explanation, a lack of empathy can deepen suffering even when the treatment is technically correct. Emotional intelligence in medicine, it is not a luxury, it is a necessity. To treat illness without addressing fear is like repairing a roof while ignoring the storm raging outside. So, whether in marriage, in the office, or in the hospital bed, the lesson resounds. Emotions matter. They shape whether a relationship endures or collapses, whether a workplace thrives or divides, whether a patient heals or struggles. Emotional intelligence is not just about feeling good, it is about living well. It is the wisdom to turn conflict into connection, criticism into growth, and care into healing. And perhaps the most unforgettable truth is this: your logic may win arguments, but only emotions can win hearts. And winning hearts, we do not just succeed, we create lives, we create workplaces, we create communities where people can truly flourish. So, imagine for a moment a child's heart. A child's heart as soft as clay, shaped daily by the hands of those who raised them. Every word, every embrace, every dismissal, it leaves an imprint. The home is the first school of emotion, and parents are the first teachers of the heart. When a child cries and the parent brushes it aside with "stop being silly," or worse, marks the feeling. The clay hardens in ways that teach shame, confusion, or silence. But when a parent kneels down, listens, names the feeling, "I see you are angry, I understand you are hurt," they are not just comforting, they are coaching. Those parents are coaching. They are equipping the child with tools that will last a lifetime. Children raised with emotional coaching, they learn 7 invisible strengths. Confidence that says, "I can face the world." Self-control that tempers impulse. Curiosity that drives them to explore. Communication that opens doors. Cooperation that builds friendships. Empathy that softens the heart. And readiness to learn that lights the path of education. These are not luxuries. They are the invisible foundation stones upon which school, success, career, resilience, and healthy relationships are built. Family life, in this sense, family life is not merely personal, it is destiny shaping. Yet, not every child grows up in such an environment. Trauma can arrive like a storm, sudden and devastating, etching scars into the emotional brain. Think of a soldier returning from war who cannot escape the sound of gunfire echoing in his mind. Or think of a child who has lived through abuse, whose body still trembles at sudden noises. Trauma is not just remembered. Trauma is relived. The brain, hyper alert, mistakes safety for danger. Memories play like broken records, flooding the mind with fear long after the moment has passed. But here is the glimmer of hope. Healing is possible. Recovery begins when safety is restored. When the storm outside finally quiets, then comes the courageous work of reshaping memory. Through therapy, through storytelling, through art, through gentle re-experiencing, terror can be rewritten into narrative. What once was an unmanageable flashback, that becomes a story with a beginning, middle, and with an end. A story that no longer controls, but is carried with strength. The human brain, it is so vulnerable to wounding. It is also capable of profound relearning. And this brings us to beautiful truth. Temperament is not destiny. Some children are born shy, other impulsive, some anxious, and some children are bold. These tendencies are written partly in biology, but they are not carved in stone. Think of a shy child shielded from every social situation. Overprotection cements the shyness. But imagine, instead, a parent who gently encourages, who offers safe but stretching experiences. A play date, a small classroom role, a chance to speak up. Slowly, new connections are formed in the child's brain. Confidence grows where once there was fear. The brain of a child is astonishingly malleable, alive with billions of connections that are shaped and reshaped through experience. Every encouragement, every opportunity, every gentle challenge writes new pathways. This is why childhood is not just a fleeting stage, it is the golden window where futures are forged. So let us pause here. What do we see? The family crucible where emotions are first molded. The shadows of trauma that can either imprison or with healing transform. Either it can imprison or it can transform with healing. The truth that temperament is not a life sentence, but a starting point. All of these, they remind us of a profound responsibility that in shaping the emotional lives of the young. We are not only guiding their present, but crafting the very architecture of their future. And perhaps the most stirring truth is this: love, attention, and guidance. They are not just feelings we give our children. They are brain sculpting forces. They are brain sculpting forces, invisible hands molding the clay of tomorrow's leaders, creators, and dreamers. The window of opportunity is open in childhood. What do we do with it? Indifference or intention? It decides what kind of world we pass on. Think for a moment about the paradox of our times. We live in an age of breathtaking progress, machines in our pockets that connect us across the world, like mobile phones, medicines that extend our lives, opportunities our ancestors never dreamt of. And yet, beneath this glittering surface, something vital is missing. Our children are growing up emotionally illiterate. Our children are emotionally illiterate. They may know how to solve equations, but they struggle to solve conflicts. They may navigate the internet with ease, but not their own feelings. And the cost is staggering. Across communities, we see depression striking earlier and harder. Violence erupts not only on streets but in schools, among teenagers who cannot channel anger except through fists or weapons. Substance abuse. It spreads as a counterfeit refuge, a desperate attempt to numb emotions that were never named, never understood. Many young people, they stumble into adulthood like travelers without maps, brilliant with information but starved of wisdom. The absence of emotional guidance at home, whether due to overwork, broken families, or neglect, it only deepens the crisis. Studies paint a sobering picture. Children's today score lower in empathy and self-control than generations before them. Imagine that for a moment. We have more knowledge, more technology, more comfort, and yet less kindness, less resilience, less capacity to face life's inevitable storms. Emotional illiteracy, it does not simply hurt feelings. It damages lives. It sets the stage for broken relationships, fragile mental health, and a society increasingly frayed at its emotional seams. But here is where hope rises. Just as we teach children to read words, we can teach them to read hearts. Just as we guide them through numbers, we can guide them through emotions. Schools can become not only centers of intellect, but also sanctuaries of emotional growth. Imagine a classroom where, alongside mathematics and science, children learn to recognize their anger before it boils, to name their sadness before it isolates, to practice empathy by truly listening to a classmate's story. Programs already exist that prove this is possible. That can prove this is possible. In one such initiative, students practice self-science, a curriculum that treats emotions as a subject to be studied, understood, and mastered. The results are striking. Better cooperation, fewer fights, stronger friendships, and improved academic performance. Why? Because when emotions are managed, attention sharpens. When empathy is nurtured, bullying declines. When children feel seen, when children feel valued, they dare to dream. They dare to dream bigger. They dare to dream, reach higher. They dare to reach higher. This is not an optional luxury. In a world where stress, distraction, and disconnection, they run rampant, schooling the emotions has become as urgent as teaching reading and writing. Emotional literacy is the hidden curriculum that equips children not just to make a living, but to make a life. It is what prepares them to handle rejection without despair, success without arrogance, and relationships without fear. So, let us reimagine education. Let us picture a generation of young people walking out of schools not only with certificates in their hands but with courage in their hearts, clarity in their minds, and compassion in their spirits. Let us recognize that emotional intelligence is not a side subject but the very subject of life itself. Because in the end, a society is not measured only by its inventions or its GDP. It is measured by the quality of its relationships, the kindness of its communities, and the resilience of its people. Emotional literacy is not just about raising smarter students, it is about raising stronger human beings capable of healing themselves, connecting with others, and building a world where both head and heart can flourish together. Then, emotions are not weaknesses to be hidden, but strengths. But they are the strengths to be understood. I hope today we carry this fact as we come close to the end of this podcast. Emotions are not weakness to be hidden, but our emotions are our strengths to be understood. Emotional intelligence is not a luxury for a few, it is necessity for all of us. It is what turns conflict into connection, pain into growth, and knowledge into wisdom. If we learn to know ourselves, master our impulses, stay motivated, empathize with others, and build meaningful relationships, we do more than shape our own lives. We shape the future of our families. We shape the future of our families. We shape the future of our workplaces. We shape the future of our communities. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing this time with me. I am RajaRao Pagidipalli, and I look forward to walking with you again on another journey of reflection and discovery. Until then, stay aware, stay compassionate, and remember, the greatest intelligence is the intelligence of the heart. Bye-bye.